domestic environment, which have taken a tremendous toll on our society. The government, in our manifesto, promised to return order to Trinidad and Tobago, and this is exactly what we are doing. That being said, the focus of the upcoming exercises would be military-to-military engagements, allowing personnel from both countries to become familiar with each other's equipments, tactics, and techniques. The exercise will challenge the participants, offering them opportunities to expand their expertise and professional development. Training will take place across Trinidad and Tobago in both urban and rural environments, with operations scheduled during dusk and after dark, and several of these exercises will incorporate the 22nd Military Expedition Unit, Marine Expedition Unit, and also the Marine Expedition Unit helicopters as well too. This is one of the many side-by-side exercises that the U.S. military has long conducted in partnership with the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. It demonstrates the strong partnership between Trinidad and Tobago and the United States based on mutual respect and is part of our long, fruitful, ongoing partnership with US-Southcom. During this period, the U.S. Embassy will also be engaging in outreach activities with various schools in Trinidad and Tobago. These visits follow the donation in September of computer equipment, office furniture, and educational resources by the US-Southcom through the U.S. Embassy, as well as infrastructure improvements carried out by US-Southcom's U.S. Naval Construction Battalion, sailors, or as they are known, Navy Seabees at the Lochmaben Roman Catholic School.
Thank you very much, Minister Sobers. We'd now like to open up for any questions from members of the media.
Yes. Hi, Ryan Hamilton, Davis, Trinidad Newsday. Good project. Yeah. Yes, hi. Ryan Hamilton, Davis, Trinidad Newsday. Has the U.S. military given any kind of indication that this may be a precursor to anything outside of Trinidad and Tobago, particularly Venezuela, or any military action heading towards there?
Absolutely not.
Okay, now we know we do have a SOFA agreement with the U.S. Based on that agreement, does the U.S. armed forces have permission to launch any kind of military strikes from TT without the sign-off of Trinidad and Tobago government?
So one, the SOFA agreement would have been signed by the previous administration in the 27th of December 2024. Two, it is a national security document which I would not be able to get involved in or share the contents of that information with
but
you.
The SOFA agreement still exists, yes?
Absolutely. Yes.
Right, so we can't get any kind of specifics as to what is the...
It is a document tethered to national security.
All right. As far as these issues are concerned as well, well, there are some wider issues I'm hoping we could speak about as well. There is this current impasse with Trinidad and CARICOM over the zone of peace. There's also issues concerning the Prime Minister of Barbados, and questions surrounding some talk about some of his things that he owns in Trinidad and stuff like that. There's the relation. Sorry, not Barbados. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonzalez. Sorry about that. And there's also this entire overarching of the GRUAC countries. We know that we are trying to get into the UN Security Council.
Members,
yes, right. So non-permanent members. Are these sort of impasses concerning you as far as getting the endorsement that you need to get a seat at the table at the UN General Council?
No. I'll tell you. When any to be a member, non-permanent 5 members of the United Nations Security Council, it's essentially a campaign that you're building to get there. sort of like a mini election. There are countries that you would have to sway to get their support. There are discussions that I had with other countries bilaterally and multilaterally for reciprocal support, which Trinidad and Tobago has been working on for quite some time. We believe that based upon the reciprocal support we've gotten thus far, we are safe in terms of our ascension as a member of the UN Security Council, as a non-permanent member. We have very good relationships with members of GRULAC, and we do not believe that there would be any issue that may arise with respect to their support when that time comes. It is not to say that in the past a similar situation hasn't arisen. As a matter of fact, I think you mentioned St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And when they were proposed as a non-permanent member of the UNSC, CARICOM, which we are a part of, we backed them. The whole of CARICOM backed St. Vincent, but at the very last moment, certain other members of GRULAC decided that they would back another candidate. But because there's a lot of work that goes in advance of actually going up for the actual election date or position, countries are reasonably certain as to where they would be in terms of crossing the line. Most of the time, countries are more concerned with how much of a margin they'll cross the line by, and respectfully, that is where we are now with respect to Trinidad and Tobago. So we are reasonably and very much certain that we are going to be non-permanent members between that period 2027-2028, and it is just a matter of building upon the support that we've already procured from certain countries in terms of moving forward. To answer, you want to say something else before I answer the other two?
No.
Okay, right. In terms of an impasse with respect to the zone of peace, I mean, I think our Prime Minister, myself, Parliamentary Secretary Morris, we've made it abundantly clear. The concept of the zone of peace, and we've discussed this in so many different forums, by now I thought it might have been pellucid. The concept of the zone of peace is a concept that was created or connected to a CELAC resolution. And it is not to say then that Trinidad and Tobago does not wish for Trinidad and Tobago to exist in a zone of peace. The position is that we have not been existing in a zone of peace. Other countries may be fortunate to say that about themselves. We can't. And if we are to be sober about it, no pun intended, having been through a crime scourge for the last decades plus, with recording over 600 murders in a year, Trinidad and Tobago has been disproportionately affected by transnational crime for some time. When you juxtapose those statistics to other countries within the Caribbean region, who record sometimes 4 murders for the month and 40-something murders for the year, and they're experiencing a crime wave, you can understand why we are in a totally different category. And to essentially hide behind a veil of a saying that there is a zone of peace when we know one does not exist for us, it is incumbent upon a government, which we are led by a Prime Minister who has that vision and that belief that we need to make Trinidad and Tobago a zone of peace. And one of the ways in which we intend to do so is by accepting the assistance of military intervention within the region that has brought tangible gains and successes against crime and criminality. Based upon that backdrop, one must understand why we are adopting the positions that we are right now. Most persons would tell you, apart from the statistics, they do feel safe. And that there's nothing to fear in terms of persons going out, plying their trade in a legitimate way. We spoke about it seriously the other day. If it is fishermen, for example, had this inert fear about venturing out into the sea that is being peddled by some persons, the cost of fish would be astronomical. The cost of legitimate fishermen are to ply their trade. Are going to ply their trade. So there's nothing for legitimate, law-abiding citizens within the region to be concerned about. And we want to echo that today based upon your question. And I think your very last question as it pertains to Prime Minister Gonzalez from St. Vincent.
Yeah, all of that was more or less overarching, the overarching situation that may affect, our position in getting the US.
Or the UNSC? No. CARICOM has given its our support. CARICOM, the way in which CARICOM votes, we vote as a bloc. Once we indicate that we are giving support, we give support. All countries would give support.
Just two more questions on the military action in particular with the US in the region. All right. First of all, is anyone considering going back to non-lethal interdiction? Because, well, it would make sense where if you have the military force and you have the military ability to strike these boats from a distance, you can intercept them, you can stop the flow of drugs, and people don't like to die. People won't die, So, and so no pun intended, everybody wins in that situation. So why isn't the government or any government or even the opposition or anyone else speaking about non-lethal interdiction? And secondly, has the AG been able to speak to the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs and give a legal opinion on whether or not these kinetic strikes are consistent with international law? Because there has been some conversation globally about that, and it seems to be leaning to these things being considered extrajudicial killings.
Right. To answer your point or your question, the second one first, which will also work well within answering the first one. You are correct. These strikes are occurring in international waters. There are some advocates, international lawyers, that would say this could constitute an extrajudicial killing. They've advanced their reasons why they believe so. And then there are many other international experts and lawyers who've come out to say, no, well, the US has declared that this is a military operation. Their Congress, their Constitution allows them to take certain kinetic actions against persons they believe to be aggressors as defined by their constitutions, no matter where these persons may reside. In this case, these kinetic actions are taking place within international waters, yes, albeit within the Southern Caribbean, but they are not taking place in our sovereign maritime waters or our EZ, nor are they taking place respectfully in Venezuelan maritime waters or Venezuelan EZ or Barbados or anywhere else. It's in international waters. And I made the point the other day, which drew some condemnation from some persons when I said that some persons were being hypocritical because I don't see them asking the very same questions when kinetic activities take place in parts of the Middle East or kinetic activities of a similar nature are taking place within the Pacific region. I respectfully don't see persons from the media or other persons raising those issues. And it's not to say that I'm trying to pour scorn upon the issue. Yes, lives are being lost. But I am certain that, one, the intelligence that the US is acting on, because its military intelligence is very sound. And two, I don't think anybody would lightly adopt this course of action without having thought it out. And I say that to say, I see your visible expression, but I'll say that to say that essentially you are weighing the balance of many lives that are being destroyed by criminal activity, transnational criminal activity, which is not only poisonous drugs reaching mainland US, but it is the flow of, and I think Sean Douglas from the Newsday at a point in time pointed out the Iron River, where guns would flow into Trinidad and Tobago from varying points. You have now, in terms of the powered guns operating, hardly have very expensive, so persons can't buy. There's no gang war taking place because there's no turf to fight over for drugs because the drugs essentially are scarce in supply, although the demand may be high. And so there is a balance that has been struck, and one where we have seen positive, tangible results based upon these kinetic strikes. As it put it, introduction, right. In terms of that, they've been done in the past respectfully, with little or no results in terms of crime statistics. And I will be brutally honest with the country. Trinidad and Tobago just did not have the capacity. We've spoken about it when we were in opposition. Dr. Munilal often chides about it sometimes, that he refers to Stobblesby as Stumblesby. How could we come as a country after purchasing several go-fast boats and larger vessels to patrol our shores in 2015 and end up with 2 or 3 working vessels to patrol the entire of Trinidad and Tobago's maritime border and be satisfied with that, and not understand that there's a direct correlation between the lack of our ability to patrol our borders and the inflow of drugs, guns, and bodies, human bodies being trafficked into this country, because we just didn't have the capacity to deal with it. And we are now the ones being called upon to account because we are actually adopting or assenting to a measure that is working positively for Trinidad.
Hi, good afternoon. Shane Superville from Guardian Media Limited here. Yesterday it was reported that the US would be intensifying their military operations in TNT, and that would have prompted several persons on social media to come forward and suspect, or rather allege, that this is just being a front for US intelligence gathering exercises, protracted US military missions in the region and so on. Can you speak directly to that? What would you respond to that and say?
Shane, if you don't mind me asking, you said that yesterday there were reports that the US indicated that they were going to intensify military operations within the US, within the TNT?
Yeah.
Where did you get that from?
That was from an interview with the Attorney General John Jeremy that was reported by the Financial Times.
Okay. So essentially, I mean, it is in line with what I have just said, that the intensification of the exercises are part of an ongoing relationship that we have with the US. Just like anything else, when you're building capacity, you start with a foundation, and then you eventually move to a superstructure as you continue to build, to ensure that things are working the way that you would like them to. And so, in the very first couple of exercises with our military, those things have been completed well enough. We believe them to have been enough. And now, to build upon that capacity, that foundation, the US is here to assist us even further to ensure that our military benefits from some training that they are going to partner with the military Marine Expedition Unit on.
So would you, confirm or deny or dismiss any sort of claims that this is being used as a front for intelligence gathering?
No, that is absolutely false. Sorry. To answer you in short here.
Well, the fact that our local, Defense Force personnel, soldiers, sailors, airmen, will be involved in this training, is that an example, or would you say that that is an example that, any further action or any further exercises would involve local military personnel if it reaches that point?
No, but they are going to be involved in this particular exercise.
Not on a training capacity, in a more military role if it reaches to that point, just as the US have been confronting, purported narco-traffickers. Is it safe to say, therefore, that because of the training exercise, that
No,
these
there's
local
absolutely no information to suggest that.
One quick question I wanted to know. I know that most of the topics you would have touched on so far in this media briefing touched on matters relating to the military, national security, the defense, and so on. How come Minister of Defense Ian Sturge isn't here to, assist in the briefing? Because I know that he's the line minister for the regiment, the Coast Guard, and the Air
Minister of the nation. So I mean, whether or not say or I was essentially, this is how the government chose to disseminate information through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But I can't can't tell you if it is you are attempting to suggest that he's not well read into any of these things that we are speaking about is not true. He is fully okra, intimately okra with what we're discussing here today.
And one last question from myself, well, so far at least, is that earlier this week, over the course of the weekend, it was reported by one of our daily newspapers that the Venezuelan diplomat, or the Venezuelan ambassador to TNT, did not participate in the wreath-laying ceremony in honor of Remembrance Day, Memorial Day, because that person was disinvited by the government. Is there any truth to that, or how would you respond to it?
Well, I mean, I wasn't there, so I wonder if I was disinvited as well.
You don't know
No,
if there's...
I don't know. I can't. I won't be able to answer that.
Understood.
Hi, good afternoon, Minister. Alicia Boucher from TV6 News. I just have two quick questions. The first is I would like to follow up on my colleague Ryan Hamilton's question on SOFA. Now, I remember when the former administration would have signed the SOFA agreement in December of 2024, the UNC, who was in opposition at the time, was then clamoring for the contents of SOFA to be made public because of concerns that Trinidad and Tobago could have been used as a launching pad for US military to attack another country, i.e. be it Venezuela. And now you're saying that the SOFA agreement is a national security agreement that cannot be revealed. Former SOFA agreements have been posted on the US Department of State website. So citizens, I believe, would have a right to know if Trinidad and Tobago can, in fact, if their country that they live in can, in fact, be used as a launching pad for US military. So again, I'll put the question to you. Does the SOFA agreement entail anything in there that allows this country to be used as a launching pad by US military, either with or without the permission of the government of Trinidad?
So, Alicia, I'd start from where I left off. Essentially, one, it is in fact a national security document, and I can't get into that. I do appreciate the juxtaposition with respect to some SOFA agreements being placed upon the U.S. State Department. You would well appreciate that their laws are not ours, and so we have laws that govern how security documentation or any information tethered to national security is supposed to be dealt with, and so we are abiding by that here. I can't speak for the U.S.'s position with respect to those things, but I would again reiterate then that it is a national security document.
So I just have a quick question, and I don't know if you would be able to answer this. Yeah. In light of what you said, in light of the fact that a past UNC administration did also sign SOFA agreements, the PNM signed SOFA agreements, then why did the discussion come up for the document or the contents of the document to be made public if, in fact, both sides, whether it be now the opposition, which was then government, or the then opposition, which is now government, why did it come up for that to be made public?
So you're asking me about I want to make sure we're clear, right? You're asking me about a question or some type of discussion that was had previously about the SOFA agreement and why the discussion was being had at that point in time. I'm not trying to be pejorative, I'm just trying to answer, right? And whilst we're having a totally different discussion on issues related to today.
I am simply saying, or simply asking.
No, I mean, essentially, just don't know if that's what you're asking.
I didn't even get you clearly in terms of what you're asking.
And I think that's the problem. I'm not getting you clearly as well, my dear.
Okay, I'm saying that when the SOFA agreement was signed, the UNC did call for it to be made public.
Right.
Right? Knowing full well it's a national security document. Full well had prior. So I'm asking, if your argument is that it's a national security document and you cannot get to that, then why was that even asked for in the first place?
Right. I suspect that even when it was asked for then, by the previous administration was equivalent or mirrored exactly what I'm telling you today. And what I would say is that at the end of the day, sometimes when we make requests, it's because we believe then that we should procure some degree of information connected peripherally to the situation. I suspect from being members of the opposition, astutely as we then were, you being members of the media, astutely as you sit here now, you are asking the very same questions. Unfortunately, it does not change the answer.
Okay, Minister, without going into the details of the SOFA agreement, can Trinidad and Tobago be used as a launching pad by any other military other than Trinidad and Tobago's military to launch an attack on any other sovereign country with or without the permission of the government of Trinidad and Tobago?
No, in short, the answer to that is no.
Okay, thank you so much, Minister. Second question. Now, you mentioned the drugs, you would have also mentioned guns. And there has been an argument for a very long time that most of the guns coming into Trinidad and Tobago actually comes in from the United States of America, which is now in international and Caribbean waters launching a war in what it calls drug cartels. So what is the discussion like at this point with the United States military, which is in the Caribbean region, launching a war on drugs as it pertains to their guns coming into Caribbean countries, including Trinidad and Tobago?
I'm glad that you asked that question. And it actually brings me back to the very same point I was making earlier on when I mentioned what Sean had spoken about with the Iron River. The concept of the Iron River really does in fact deal with the majority of firearms in terms of some degrees of investigations coming from the US. In reality, what our statistics demonstrate to us is that firearms in this country come through both legal and illegal ports of entry. Some of the firearms that are illegally obtained, when they do come from the legal ports of entry, they have origin or originated from the US, but they've also originated from other territories as well. But in terms of the mass amount of illegal firearms that come into Trinidad, they come through illegal ports of entry. The ammunitions as well too, the varying amounts of ammunitions from .22 to 9mm to 5.56 to 7.62 to .5 ammunition, which is not supposed to be utilized really. They do come from illegal ports of entry, and with the greatest of respect to all our colleagues that live in South America, that is where those arms and ammunition come from. So the majority of the illegal gun flow and munition flow comes from the illegal ports, which is from South America.
And the gun flow is linked to the drugs.
Well, yeah, it's a link. Yeah.
Good morning, Minister.
Good
Bishop,
morning.
morning, from Express Newspapers.
What's your name, my dear?
Vidal Bishop,
Michelle.
yes. Can you confirm whether the ambassador for Venezuela is currently the dean of the diplomatic corps in Port of Spain?
Absolutely, he is the dean of the diplomatic
Okay,
corps in
and
Port of Spain.
why was not he invited to the wreath laying ceremony
Well,
on Remembrance Day?
that connects to the very same question that the goodly gentleman Shane asked. I am not aware that he was not invited, my dear.
Okay.
Minister, I just have one final question.
Of course you do.
Can okay, so in terms of, now I know that the exercises that are to be taking place over, I think you said the 16th to the 21st, right?
Yes.
It's part of a long-standing agreement with the US Southcom and so on. Would there be anything different, without going into too much details, because I know obviously there would be technical national security aspects of it, different from for our members of our...
Yes. So as I mentioned before, essentially we are building capacity. So when I used to go to the gym a lot, I don't go as often now, we always used to have a saying, steel sharpens steel. So for you to become better, stronger, brighter, faster, you have to build and train with somebody that is stronger, faster, better, brighter, considerably, or has a better capacity than yourselves. And so as we build that capacity with our TTDF, and they'll be training with these Marines, that is what we expect to happen, an intensified version of what they were normally accustomed to get them to that level.
Minister, can you say when will ambassadors be appointed to Caracas and Washington, D.C.?
No, I can't say. We have a number of ambassadors who we have not appointed as yet. And in my last interview that I did with someone, I mentioned to them that it is a process that we are taking our time with. There's a lot of due diligence that has to be conducted before an ambassador is appointed. That due diligence takes place on our side first. And then when we do, in fact, settle on a name, we have to forward that to send the person to. And then they have to conduct their due diligence and then sign an agreement basically saying, yes, can come. So as you would well be aware, we have an ambassador to Peru, New York, which is Dr. Neil Hassan. We have recently sent out former industrial court president, Mrs. Deborah Thomas Felix, who has a wealth of knowledge, and she's now the High Commissioner to Jamaica. We would have sent out Mr. Chandradat Singh, who would be the High Commissioner to India, posted in New Delhi. And we are working assiduously on getting other ambassadors posted. But we will take our time with it because we want to ensure that the best possible position is placed within the mission that they intend to serve. Also because in terms of what we have been guided and instructed to do by our Prime Minister with respect to this ministry, we are going to continue to advance the bedrock principles of foreign affairs or any affairs ministry, which is tethered to soft diplomacy. But we are also going to ramp up something called commercial diplomacy. And so it is important that the ambassadors that we do send out, they appreciate what we mean in that context of commercial diplomacy.
I just want to switch gears real quick. As you mentioned, the ambassador of Jamaica, I understand, the High Commissioner to Jamaica, I understand that she is in Jamaica right now with assisting with relief for Jamaica after Hurricane Melissa.
Yes.
Just give me an idea of how works are going on there. We know TNTech sent a number of people for a 30-day period. And we also got information, I believe about last week, that we may also send some military personnel there, but we weren't able to get a timeline for that. So could you tell me a little bit about what's going on with Jamaica?
Yeah. So, again, on behalf of the government and the people of Trinidad and Tobago, our hearts go out to the people and the government of Jamaica during this very, very trying time. The Hurricane Melissa really destroyed parts of the island, the western part of the island, tourists would go to, such as Montego Bay and Negril. I mean, I've been to Montego Bay and Negril, and I think it's absolutely beautiful, but the devastating effects of the hurricane, you know. So, in terms of our directions from the Prime Minister, we have been sending out containers. I think the last number would be about
in total 8 containers.
Eight would have gone out, and then we have about 4.
4 more going.
Right, so about 12 containers, 40
40-foot
foot,
containers.
12 40-foot containers would have gone to Jamaica. The containers would have been packed with items that we would have received a listing from CDMA, who would have worked with the Jamaicans version of ODPM. So we ensured that we sent items that they needed. The ones that they requested, that is what we sent. This opportunity as well participated, because corporate really did in terms of their efforts in getting these items out to Jamaica. I thank the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, the Supermarkets Association, and all the other associations that assisted and are still assisting currently right now because the efforts are still ongoing at the port in Point Lisas. And yes, we would have sent off, I think, on Tuesday, some TNTech contingent to Jamaica for them to do work there for a period of time. That was made. Now, with respect to the request being made for the TTDF contingent to go, that request we're trying to ensure that that we get a proper request before we send those gentlemen out. So they would be part of a unit that is really deployed to help for reconstruction, clearing of roads, roadworks and whatnot. But there are a few little intricacies that have to be worked out before we actually deploy them. And we are currently in the process of doing that with the Jamaicans right now. And once that is done, and the need still is there, they will be deployed.
Hi, good afternoon again. Just wanted to touch back on the issue of the training exercises between local military forces and the U.S. Marines Expeditionary Force. You know, in 2025 alone this year, we've had several joint military training exercises between March to April. I understand we had the Trade Winds exercise, where not too long ago, maybe last month, from September into October, we also had a separate, batch of military exercises involving our local regiment. Some might ask, this latest military exercise, what's so special about this? What does this touch on? Because some would even say that it happens at a very curious time in the region, given everything that's going on.
I'll answer two things here. I wanted to also finish up on the Jamaica point because we, as you know, the hurricane would have also hit Cuba and Haiti, and we have been in contact with the Transitional Presidential Council in Haiti to try to get relief to Haiti. Hopefully we'll have some containers going out to Haiti soon. And then we also will have containers going out to Cuba. That is also one logistically that we have to work around with, but we have been in contact with the Cuban ambassador and representatives from Cuba so that we can send some relief out to them. They've sent their needs list to us, so we have it. We recently received the needs list from Haiti. So containers have already been packed, and logistically it's just to get those containers out as well, to ensure that we meet the needs of all our CARICOM brothers and sisters that have been so affected. In terms of your question, no, I do. In terms of this being something special, it is. I mean, every time we get help from a foreign superpower, it should be considered something special. And as I mentioned before, just by using that saying, steel sharpening steel, you only get better when you work with somebody who essentially is better or in a better position than you are. You're not going to become better at journalism if you work with somebody who just started and you are 5 years called into journalism. You'd get better if you work with somebody who has 10 years or 15 or 20 years experience. And that is essentially what is occurring between our two countries. And that is where so it tethers back to exactly what I've been saying. Capacity building. You need to start somewhere, produce your foundation, and then build your superstructure as you go along. And that is what has been happening over the last couple of months with respect to the TTDF, the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, members of the Special Forces, members of the SNU Special Naval Unit, and working alongside the U.S.
Has the cabinet been briefed on the arrival of the USS Gerald Ford in Caribbean waters, which occurred earlier this week between Tuesday and Wednesday?
You know, I heard and I looked on just like everybody else concerning this Gerald Ford. I mean, it's not in Trinbagonian waters, and it's somewhere in the Caribbean. I don't know where it is, and to be in short, no, because it's not something that the U.S. would speak to us about. It's not a ship that is coming to Trinidad. It's not something that we would be aware about. It's a military ship. They have their need to know positions, and at this juncture, it does not touch and concern Trinidad and Tobago, so we don't need to know.
And lastly, just as the asset, there's also been reports, albeit unverified reports, that the military has also deployed several close to Venezuela. I know that Russia does have a consulate in Guyana, which serves as sort of a regional, liaison to the region between the Russian government and the Southern Caribbean. Has the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs been in contact with them recently, given everything that's been going on, or have you all had
No,
reason
we had no reason to reach out to Russia considering anything as it relates to Venezuela. Russia has assisted Venezuela in the past on a number of different occasions, in a number of different iterations. And so there's no inertia to push us to reach out to the Russian consulate in Guyana and ask them anything about their relations with Venezuela. We know that they are good friends and they have bilateral relations, and nothing is wrong with that. Alicia, I thought that was your last question.
All right. Final question. I know, it has been stated that we needed assistance in terms of the guns and the drugs and coping with that, and maritime border security. But, in light of what we are seeing with the level of weapons of war that we now have in regional waters, Minister, I wanted to ask, if with the narrative, there is also a narrative that this is part of wanting regime change in Venezuela, right? The US has denied that, but it has been suggested. So let me just ask, although this particular situation at this point, based on what you've said, serves our purpose in terms of reducing crime and as it pertains to guns and drug cartels and so on, if this leads in fact to a war in our Caribbean region, would you be willing to support a war that stems from what we are seeing in our Caribbean region?
Your question began by speaking about weapons of war in the region.
That is correct.
Respectfully, as if it was something that happened yesterday.
I'm speaking about the level of weapons of war.
As if it was something that happened yesterday. Weapons of war within the region, not only within the region, within Trinidad and Tobago, they've been here for quite some time. Persons have been going around this country indiscriminately shooting at people with AK-47s and AR-15s, which are weapons of war, for some time, prior to what is taking place now. So I really can't understand. Just 1 second, my dear. I'll allow you after. And when that occurred, the previous administration came to the parliament and they asked for support to increase penalties with respect to these same weapons of war. And what did the opposition, now government, do? We supported them because we understood how dangerous and crazy these weapons would be to have them on the streets in the hands of, unfortunately, some young men who would be misguided. So that is a problem that we faced as a nation prior to April 20, 2025. And it is a problem that we intended to deal with head on, the Prime Minister indicated when she got into office. We've been doing that. I can't recall the last time that I've heard or seen somebody spraying down a car or going into a neighborhood and doing a drive-by shooting and killing 6 people at the same time, or going on a football field where children are playing and killing people indiscriminately with these weapons that could shoot out 30-something rounds in less than 30 seconds or something like that. These things are not occurring anymore. So if what we're doing is having a tangible and positive effect to get rid of that problem, then thank God by all means that we're doing what we're doing.
So, Minister, what I'm asking is, as much as that benefits our country, if this narrative that all of what we're seeing, the US destroyers, I understand AK-47s and all of these things are weapons of war, to the level in the Caribbean pertains to the US, all of these big that you would see like in a war Gaza that we're seeing here in the Caribbean region, Minister. If in fact this narrative that this is for regime change in Venezuela, and this leads to a war in our Caribbean region of that nature, not what you are referring to, which I'm sure all of the citizens are happy that, you know, crime and all of these things are down, right? Right, so I'm asking if that stems into a war of that nature, is that something, Minister, that you are willing to support?
One, my dear, that question does not arise, it's conjecture. And two, the US apparatus, military apparatus, belongs to the United States government. If they feel to move it from the Southern Caribbean to the Pacific, they'll do that. If they feel to move it from the Pacific to the Antarctic, they will do that. If they feel to move it from the Antarctic to the South Pole, they will do that. We have absolutely no control where they decide to move these ships or submarines, as you say, to wherever they want to move them. They are saying, and they've said to the world, that the position is we are attacking narco-traffickers and transnational crime. They believe that moving around these ships may very well help them to do that. Well, then so be it. Essentially, then your question should be posed to them and not to Trinidad and Tobago, because the ships don't belong to us. We don't direct the ships where they need to go. We're not in control of their marine unit or logistics as it pertains to where these ships have to move and go and whatnot. So, I mean, you know, I think that is a question that is kind of, it is in fact conjecture.
But if it does spawn into that,
Which is conjecture again.
Right, I'm just saying. But I mean that everybody has their limits and everybody has their foundation and everybody has their morals. I'm saying that if it does get into that, is there something that you would stand against?
All
is
I'm saying
that
is
you
that
would
if you,
support?
which I've done this morning, if you ask me something factually, I will answer. But if you ask me something based upon conjecture, what would you do if this happens? I mean, I've never done it as a lawyer, and I am not going to do it as a minister. If it happens, trust that your government will stand with you, and we will make the best possible decision in the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. That is what I can say.
Thank you so much, Minister.
Of course, no problem.
Minister, just one more question from me.
Oh God,
Back
I
to
thought you were going to say
Jamaica.
no more questions.
Were the students ever given discounts to come to?
Yes, there was an arrangement that was worked out privately between Caribbean Airlines, because last time when I say, oh, they ask how much money I give the people and I get, I mean, I think it's a private thing. We make sure that the Empress in Jamaica was well taken care of, so that the Jamaican students, Trinbagonian, and otherwise who requested help, our High Commission went out there and they assisted them, right? But in terms of an arrangement with respect to a discounted rate, I am aware that some type of arrangement was worked out between Caribbean Airlines and the students and their family members. The extent of what that arrangement is, you would have to pose that question to Caribbean Airlines.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, thank you for joining us at the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs today as we continue to update you on this government's partnership with our global allies to make sure that we can improve the welfare of our communities and citizens. So thank you again very much.
Thank you.
This is TTT. Live for local.
Hello，我叫吴瑞琴，我是大型摇乐赢家，耶！
We have a Trinidad resident, and her name is Is there a shorter version?
Yes, my name is Kim.
Okay, so moving forward, we would refer to you as Kim. So let me ask you a little bit about your winning experience. Where did you buy your winning ticket?
Ronnie Supermarket.
Is that in Arima?
Yeah, there's an Arima.
Okay, great. How was your experience when you won? What is the first thing you did?
So when I win, I hiding it first.
You were hiding the ticket?
Yeah.
Okay, but who did you